It ends in a whimper for India. The Border-Gavaskar Trophy goes back to Australia after 10 years. They reign supreme in Sydney and close out a 3-1 series victory. Welcome to ESPN Cricinfo Match Day with Sanjay Manjrekar. The 20th and final day of play in this quite riveting series. But it proved to be a perfect microcosm of the series. No Bumrah on the park and the gulf between the sides showed.
And also not enough runs on the board, which is also a reflection of what has been India's problem in the series. Pat Cummins typically, dealing that decisive blow, getting Jadeja out. So any chances of, India adding another 60 runs disappeared with that. Washington also didn't, contribute much. And with Bumrah coming into bat, raised hopes, but 160 without Bumrah was never going to be enough. How much ever life there would have been in the pitch, considering that India just had 2 medium paces, and that has to be the real talking point. On a pitch like this, with Bumrah out, just 2 medium paces.
Yeah, I do want to come to that, but just closing out that Bumrah factor, because the chase and how easily it played out, because 162 has been chased at 6 per over. It just shows what the series could have been if Bumrah wasn't around for India.
Yes, you can say that because it starts with the very first test match. Very first day almost, when India batted first, got 150, and Bumrah single-handedly gave India a lead of 45. And that is where, the trend was set. India started believing in themselves more and was able to compete. But in the end, that is the wonderful thing about Test cricket. It gets played over 5 days, so teams are able to bounce back, and a 5-match series, tells you in the end which was really the better team. And when you look at bowling, Australia's bowling attack seemed like it was getting better and better, reverse for India.
Yeah, and one of the key cogs for that Australian bowling attack proved to be a decisive factor on the final day as well. Scott Boland, he'd done the bulk of his damage earlier in the test, but to finish with a 6-for, get a first 10-for in his first-class career, not just in internationals, and really such a point of difference in the last 3 tests, been unplayable.
Yes, because he has the skills. He has the right kind of bowling style, bowls the right line and length for the pitches that he played on. Now, this is the guy who's played in India as well, but nobody remembers him because the pitches there were different. So he's pitch dependent, but he's damn good in the sense that I'm sure every Indian batter, if they were given a choice, I know Pat Cummins is a fine bowler, but he was just bowling those wicket-taking balls every ball. So there was no respite, whoever the batter was. Plus the fact that he was a lot fresher than Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins because he hasn't played all the test matches. So that's one benefit when you have a skilled bowler who hasn't bowled as much, because Mitchell Starc looked tired right at the end of the series, not Scott Boland.
And reflects itself in the final numbers, because you think of Bumrah's average of 13.06 and it feels implausible. Scott Boland has finished with an average of 13.2.
And yes, there is a theory that, in fact, we saw who I think may have been Pat Cummins also. I mean, his speed also went down to 130. So even the greats are humans, and you do get tired, bowling continuously. But yeah, Australia blessed to have somebody like a Boland replacing Josh Hazlewood.
The efforts of Boland and Cummins early on day 3 meant Australia were left with 160 to chase. Clear intent in the chase. Perhaps easier to pull off in the absence of a Jasprit Bumrah, but still an intent worth praising.
Yes, and that is again, he didn't get a big score, but 20 run chase of 160 by Constas was good. Khawaja also looked a lot more positive, but look at the attack. I mean, you had a Prasidh Krishna on debut and a Mohammed Siraj that was getting really tired, and then a Nitish Kumar Reddy. India couldn't go to spinner, so the challenge also was in a way meek, and the target, although we were hoping that Australians batting unpredictability would come and favour India again, but wasn't to be.
Yeah, in these last 2 tests, which decided the course of this edition of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy, Australia fielded 2 debutants. Sam Constas at the MCG left his mark on Bumrah, on Kohli, on India, and now you've had Beau Webster to come in for a decider and leave a mark on pretty much every innings. There are 2 knocks, there's some handy bowling, and there's good slip catching as well.
Yes, and when you look at the Australian batting lineup, I think they have a problem with their batting. When you have somebody like Labuschagne batting at number 3 with the technique that he has, and Usman Khawaja, who's also not technically, sound enough to be a consistent opening batter. He's a damn fine batter. Somebody like a Beau Webster with a very good organized game, batting at number 6 will be a thorn in the flesh of a lot of opposition bowlers. And I think he puts himself in serious contention to take that spot away from people like Mitchell Marsh and Cameron Green. Really like the way he batted. Somewhere I felt, because of his inclusion, that even if India get 2 or 3 early wickets, this is a guy who will be able to manage. And him hitting the winning runs was perhaps just justice for the kind of game that he has, a batting all-rounder.
Yeah, he shared a partnership of 58 with Travis Head, which ends up being the highest partnership of this test match. That's how low scoring it was. And it feeds well into the narratives that Travis Head was in the middle for the final act. Because if it's a series against India, and he did leave that indelible mark at Adelaide and Brisbane.
Yes, and somehow he's there when Australia win the big matches or the big moments against India. Interestingly, this particular run chase, I thought because the target was small, he would play even more sort of with flair and put the opposition under pressure. But he played sensibly, played like Travis Head has right through the series, and he's been actually the one batter from Australia and maybe from both sides who's kept it simple. He's just focused on the ball and he's just thought runs and found ways to get it.
Now to go back to what you brought up at the start. India lost Jasprit Bumrah, but that meant they had effectively 2.5 bowlers because they've had a number 8 in this test match who's bowled 1 over, which was the last over of the game.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think of, an important place in that Indian Test 11 in a marquee series, barring that 50. Washington Sundar with the bat hasn't contributed much. I think he's a highly talented bowler, but he has a place when the pitch is turning overseas. And with Jadeja already there, Nitish Kumar, Reddy as well, plus Washington Sundar, I thought that was blunderous, his selection on a pitch like this.
And the fact that this has been a theme throughout the series is not a good look for India.
No, because the last 2 tours to Australia, India didn't have a single player who was played because of his second skill. They always focused on his main skill, and if that was good enough to get him in the side, the other skill was a bonus. Here I thought India went the England way when England was not winning, just wanted batting depth. And you see what happens when the pressure is on and when it gets a bit serious. All those people that you think will help bolster your batting tend to let you down. The specialists don't do that as much, but of course when people will say, what about Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, the specialists? But yeah, you know what I am.
Yeah, there are lots of layers to peel as far as this Indian summer down under is concerned. If we were to get into all of it, it would be a rather long day for Mr. Manjrekar, so we'll save it for the next day. Be sure to catch it on ESPN Cricinfo in the coming days, but we must give the credit to the victors before we close out for today, because this is a momentous occasion for this serial winning generation of Australian cricket. Smith, Cummins, Stark, there's just that one slab that was left in their rather glittering cabinet, and today it's filled.
Yes, and I think Pat Cummins deserves a pat on the back. That came out, automatic. There was no preparation. I'm becoming better than John Arlott with my comments. But yeah, so Pat Cummins, excellent captaincy, tactically brilliant, bowling-wise led by example. Most overs from Australia, plus batting when it was needed, and slowly and steadily he's been at the helm of what is turning out to be a pretty good bowling attack. I mean, Nathan Lyon wasn't needed at all. This is looking like a great bowling attack because you've got Mitchell Stark with his unique flair. Pat Cummins is always reliable no matter what the condition. Conditions helpful for seam bowlers. You've got Scott Boland, Josh Hazelwood will come back. Batting is still an issue, and despite that, Pat Cummins was able to still, have his team together and winning the big moments. So well done to Australia. I also loved the aggression, which is not, in your face kind of body language. Just the attack and the tactics, bowling short and trying to scare the lower order batters, which was the thing to do for Australia. And many teams in the past had disappeared from the Australian cricketing culture. It's come back, and that's great to see.
Yes, and so for the third time in just about 18 months, WTC final, ODI World Cup final, and now this to get the Border-Gavaskar Trophy back to Australia after a decade. Congratulations, Australia.